everybody, and welcome to a very special episode of Taipology. I'm Angelica Ong, and this is Mr. Paul Huang, my friend, who is also the research fellow for the Taiwan Public Opinion Foundation and an independent journalist specializing in, I would say, military affairs. And Paul is a real wealth of knowledge, and his posts, when I saw it on Twitter, were so informative on Taiwan's military issues that I just reached out and we started talking and became friends. So first of all, Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year, everyone.
And I'm really looking forward to Paul, my first guest on the Taipology podcast. And of course, Happy New Year also from Afu, the dog. How are you doing today, Paul?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Yeah, I'm ready to get right into it. The year certainly started with a big bang with the whole Venezuela thing.
Well, it was a big bang.
Yeah. But I think we're here to talk more about what's going on in Taiwan.
Sure.
And I know that through your work with the Taiwan Public Opinion Foundation, actually, can you introduce the Taiwan Public Opinion Foundation a little bit, the kind of polling that you guys do?
So when people talk about polling, imagine if you are in a room of, say, 10 people, and you want to know what people like to eat, like to drink, for the upcoming party tonight, and you go about, the easiest way is to go about ask everybody, and then you get a head count, like how many people want certain food, certain drinks. And because you sample everybody, you ask everybody, your sample is 100%.
Yeah.
And your accuracy would be near 100%. Well, because you say like 6 people want the pizza, 3 people want the
You have 100% of the information.
Yes. However, with a population of 1 million, 10 million, 20 million, even 100 million, what you can do is you randomly select, and you have to make sure that those samples are random. Out of a certain number out of those million, tens million, and you ask the same questions that you would ask in a party, and then find out the answer that from them. And if you do it right, if samples are representative, then these group of samples sort of reflect what this big chunk of people, 1 million, 10 million, 20 million, even 100 million.
There are a lot of pollsters in Taiwan. What makes Taiwan Public Opinion Foundation different?
We are independent organizations. We're not partisan.
A lot of partisan polls.
We don't get any money from the government.
Where do you get your money from?
Independent supports.
Yeah. Anyhow, it's I consider the gold standard of polling in Taiwan. And in addition to the accurate weighting, I think what sets Taiwan Public Opinion Foundation apart is that they ask really thoughtful questions in a really timely way. And they can be quite illuminating. So from my point of view, Paul, the last year has been something of a political earthquake in Taiwan. The DPP-backed Great Recall movement failed spectacularly 32-0. And I'm wondering, from my point of view, it's as if public sentiment shifted overnight. Before the actual election, all the online sentiments were falling over on one side, 一面倒, towards the pan-green viewpoint, and then the pendulum completely swung after all the recall failed. So obviously, I don't think everybody changed their minds overnight. I think it's more like people got the permission to speak up about being unhappy with the DPP. Was this something that you were able to see in polling ahead of the elections?
Months before the recall vote, we already polled and found majority of public were not in favor of the recalls.
Why do you think that never penetrated? Because I think I also remember seeing some polls ahead of the recall that the public was not in favor of it. But right up to the day of the recall, everybody still had this fixed belief that 5, 7, 12 KMT legislators were going to get recalled. Why do you think that is?
I think the DPP, the Light government, they sort of still held a hope that because of this discrepancy between the people, the DPP supporters, and the general public, their willingness to actually go on voting that day, so they could sort of exploit that. And if even though the majority were against the recall, if they can somehow mobilize the DPP supporters and had an out voting while the most of the opposing public stay home, in theory that could work.
Well, I'm glad everybody went out and voted because we did come out and vote and deliver a big loss to the DPP. It's just there's so much happening in Taiwan politically right now that it must be interesting to track the trends on the polling. Can you bring us up to date on what the latest trends are?
Well, after a few months, the DPP and the Lai Ching-te's approval started to recover. As we have found the last 2-3 months, their Lai is now still in the majority negative approval, but he could recover to positive approval over the next months if the trend holds.
What do you think caused first the approval rating to tank and then recover?
Well, the timing suggests it was the Great Recall, the failure of that movement, and the government's support of that movement, and so it was perceived as a huge DPP failure.
What about the KMT? How has their the KMT and the TPP are the two other parties in Taiwan, and I feel like after the recall, the KMT especially seemed to have gotten a real boost from the polls.
The problem with the KMT is its base of support just isn't as large as the DPP. And the TPP have a significant number of younger supporters, but it's not enough to put them on par with the DPP. So the oppositions are basically the people who oppose DPP, who don't like the DPP, they're divided between the KMT and the TPP.
Yeah, that's the only equation that matters in Taiwanese politics right now, as I've talked about in a previous show, is that KMT plus TPP is bigger than DPP, but KMT is smaller than DPP, and TPP is smaller than DPP. This means that heading towards the local elections in 2026, I don't know if there's a special name for those elections in English, but heading into those local elections next year, do you think that the KMT-TPP alliance can hold together?
Well, it's going to be a local election, so most focus will be put on mayoral elections, and for most part, those will be KMT candidates. They are going with the TPP, they are going to negotiate and find common grounds, common candidate. Just because if the TPP has its own candidate in the race, you would pretty much destroy any chance that KMT could win against the DPP.
Yeah, I think in a way it's always a challenge for two parties to work together, but the local elections are probably less of a challenge than the 2028 presidential elections?
Well, we don't know what's going to happen in 2028.
Yeah. Yeah, that's certainly a lot to think about. I would encourage you to follow Paul on Twitter. We will put his handle here in post, and you will be able to catch up with the latest of what Taiwanese people are thinking. I actually want to bring up some polls that is not by the Taiwan Public Opinion Foundation, and I wish I had the number in front of me. Maybe I'll put that in post too. But it's by 远见杂志. I don't know if you heard of this particular poll. It's a poll about how Taiwanese feel about the whether
The willingness to fight poll.
Yes, it's the willingness to fight poll.
I'm very well aware of those polls.
Maybe you can bring us up to date, because I found it really interesting, and I realized I should have prepared better and put the numbers in front of me, but I didn't. So, Paul, why don't you recap those polls from the magazine?
So this is what I describe as the willingness to fight poll. You see this in the news a lot. They talk about, most Taiwanese are willing to fight. Most Taiwanese are not willing to fight if China attacks. When you see those polls, and here's my problem with all of these kind of polls is they are essentially useless. And the reason is not even close to 2 or 3% of the Taiwanese out of the general public are going to be in any position, realistic position of fighting if a war happens.
So you mean military plus reserves?
Yes. And outside of this group of predominantly young military age male, the 90-something% of the people that these polls ask questions to, they are like old people, or women, or people that basically people are not in any position to fight.
Yeah, so it's like what me and Afu, our willingness to fight is not going to make a difference.
So when people are asked, it would be the same as if you ask people, what would you do if an alien invasion occurred? It's a hypothetical question, and so you are not going to get any accurate prediction of people's behavior, because at that point everyone have different understanding, a different perception what a war would look like. And even we don't know what the war will look like. China could attack in many different ways. And so this is a hypothetical scenario where the public have no common understanding of what both the public and the experts have no shared understanding what it will look like. And you are trying to you're trying to predict people's behavior, which is the hardest things.
But I do think it's interesting that actually the majority said that they don't want to fight, and they don't want their loved one to fight. So even if the question is kind of hard to interpret correctly, I do think there's some value engaging the public sentiment. I think if you are right off the bat saying, I don't want me or my personal loved ones to fight, I think it's something like 60-something%.
But if my memory serves, there are at least 5 different organizations that have been doing pollings on the so-called willingness to fight question. The Yuanjian magazines is one of them, and the way they ask questions and then you see the publish, they usually suggest that most Taiwanese wouldn't fight. The other one being the Formosa newsletter or something. and the other one is the government's
Ah.
government's institution, government's the ruling government run National Foundation for Democracy, and although right now it is controlled by the legislative yuan. Also, the other one is the Ministry of National Defense's think tank called the IMDSR. They also do this poll. And last but not least, I believe the Mainland Affairs Council, they also do these kind of polls. So you have government, ruling government organizations, the Ministry of Defense, and you have magazine that is ideologically moving toward the KMT, and then you have those DPP type. All these, they're asked, and they get all different answers here and there.
Got it. So I think that's some real nuance here, and we really have to watch out for polling that basically become push polling. Would you say?
I don't. When these polls, when they ask questions like that, would you be willing to fight? I consider them invalid poll. Mm-hmm. There's nothing. There's no value in even asking that questions.
What do you think would be a better way to get at what the question is trying to find out, which is what the Taiwanese public think about a military-based deterrence of China versus a more collaborative engagement solution to the cross-straits issue?
The poll could ask, are you an active military service member? If you are not, are you a reservist, meaning that you were discharged some years ago? And if so, how often have you received mobilizations, refresher training? And those numbers you get, that will be accurate because those are fact-based questions.
But that's sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I'm wondering if there's so that'll get us to how many people can fight. But I think because Taiwan is a democracy, and the idea is what the government should do should reflect the will of the people, shouldn't there be some sort of value in polling the population on their sentiments towards this issue? Because even if we don't fight, we still have skin in the game. Even if we can't physically resist, we still stand a lot to lose, depending on whether or not we have a peaceful resolution to the cross-strait issue.
You look at wars throughout history. It's very small minority of people that actually do the fighting.
Yes.
So what's the point of asking general public, who most of them are not going to be in any position of fighting? So that kind of poll question is fundamentally wrong. It's like a room with people. So go back to my first example, a room of 10 people, you're trying to organize a party, and yet only 3 out of 10 of those people are going to stay for the party, and yet you ask the other 7 people what they're going to, what do they want to eat. It's a completely wrong sample to begin with, because the other people are not going to be in the party, so why ask them about pizza or cake or...
So Paul, you were in the military. You were a conscript, right?
Yes, I did my military service.
Yeah.
Many years ago.
It was interesting to hear some of your tweets about your time in military service, and I wonder if you can recall some of that time. And it's quite, I consider it quite shocking, the lack of preparedness in terms of gear and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Can you share a little bit about those experiences and from those days?
So my experience consists of having done 1 year military service more than 10 years ago, and there was a reservist refresh training that I was co-op in 2022.
I think that's the tweets I saw was from your refresher training.
And those consist of the entirety of my experience there. And right now is 2026. So I have to believe, I have to assume that a lot of those things have changed. But things always change, even when they don't. And so the military could have changed a lot. I cannot just based on my assessment on those 1 year, 10 years ago,
sure, that's fair
or the
enough.
1 week that I did in 2022. Although when that happened, that 1 week happened, I tweeted about it. Because I documented that because it was a very valuable data point to look into it. However, it's been a few years. My assessment, my judgment now, don't come from don't primarily come from those experiences. They come from the news, the data points that I have been seeing, the testimony of people that I interview, the general sentiment that I observe, I see from the people who serve, who are still there, and that I think are, as an analyst, that's where I rely on.
I'd love to hear more about it. What is your assessment based on all those different sources?
The morale is still very low. The readiness in terms of active service units have been improving very slowly, as well as reservist training. In the last few years, they improved. I would say substantially, but just because the starting point was so bad, so low, so they're only catching up to the minimum standards, but not exceeding any of the minimum. They still have a lot to improve, and the time it took them to improve is too long.
Okay, so I just personally, obviously I'm not an expert on this, but the last year, 2025, have seen a lot of shocking improvements in Chinese military technology, and I can think off the top of my head, we had the India-Pakistan SMO, and you had some Chinese jets perform very well against top-of-the-line European jet fighters. I think it was J-10Cs that took down Rafales, which were much more expensive. So that's one example where they performed very well. The aircraft carrier Fujian debuted with the electromagnetic catapult, which is very cutting edge technology. And we also had the big military parade on September the 3rd. Have you been paying attention to that? And what do you think that does to the balance of power across straits? And where does Taiwan stand now? And what is the 11 billion weapons purchase package from America going to do?
So there are several things. To start, on the Chinese side, their advances in their military and technologies have been rapid and significant for a very long time. They continue to improve and increase. It's not just the last few years. They started way earlier, probably for the last 20 years. It's just that a lot of these hardware, the ships, the missiles, the drones, the plane, the fighter jets, they were being built in the last decade, about the last decade or half and a half. But when people look at it, they think it started off in around 2010. They start off earlier because you don't. The Chinese they're doing the smart thing. They don't mass produce something that is not mature. So they are progressing their technology, their mastery of those technologies, the radar, the sensors, the missiles, the launch systems, and they start mass produce those in quantity when they are reasonably assured that they have the maturity, they have this system, this weapon, and the entire system work together. And you see this especially in the POA Navy. Across 2000 to 2010, the Chinese Navy didn't expand that much. However, from 2010, around the time Xi Jinping took power, the massive shipbuilding started. Why? Because and you can see that by the number of the ships that are being built each year. So the most number of ships, the most numerous Navy destroyer and frigate classes that were being built, the Type 54A frigates, the Type 55, the Type 52 D destroyers, and the Type 55 destroyers, more often classified as cruisers. So those all started after 2010 because they were waiting on the technologies to be ready. The sensors, the radar, the vertical launch systems, everything combined. And then once they master the technology, they start mass producing.
So that's why, from our point of view, it just came out of nowhere. But they actually had
They started earlier. The resources, the manpower, the technology, the efforts were invested huge amount into maturing these technologies, and they came to a point in 2010. They decided it's time to build things.
Got it. Well, I was in Shanghai actually on September 3rd, and I was taking a ride share, and the rideshare driver told me, so I don't know how reliable this is, but the Chinese always have like 4 generations going on at once. So there'll be the mature generation about to be obsolete, the generation that's the mainstay now, that's more advanced. Then they have the generation that they show in the big parades. And then they have a more advanced generation that they're not showing anyone yet. So whatever we saw maybe even wasn't the most cutting edge stuff. But yeah, it does give you a lot of pause, because I feel like a lot of the weapons purchases that is coming down the line from the US, and we're getting tremendous pressure to buy more from the United States all the time. I just don't know if they are fit for purpose, and I'd love to hear your professional take on that.
A lot of time when people do military commentary, you have a lot of pundits, and also just common people. They tend to see the military as a Lego games. Like the more stuff you pile up, the more weapons you buy, you add it like a pile, and then you think a war is comparing whose pile is bigger and taller. That's not how wars work. The history have told us, the history of wars told us, is a lot of things behind just those piles that you see. Those are the ones that matter the most. It's about the technologies involved, whether the whole thing, the people and the machines they operate, and the tactic, the strategy, the whole system. How affected are these two things, and then pitch one against another.
Okay, so it's not about how many HIMARS does Taiwan have. It's about how the system of everything we have in Taiwan, including the people, versus the system from the mainland. And I have to think there's a lot of uncertainty because with the Taiwan system, you also have to figure out, are the Japanese coming? Are the Americans coming? How far are they coming? What are they going to be able to do? I feel like there are a lot of unknown unknowns there, to quote Donald Rumsfeld.
So a lot of time, when people, in terms of Taiwan's arms sales,
Yeah,
the problem is people saying that the more stuff we buy, the safer we are.
that's not true.
And I actually I actually think it's the otherwise. The more hardware that we buy, the less safe we become.
Wait, hold that thought. That's fascinating. But I hear somebody at the door, and I just need to check it out. No, it's okay. You can come in if you want. That's my sister. I might or might not cut that out depending on how lazy I am. But yeah, don't worry, Karen. Come on in. Sorry. Yeah, let's pick up on that fascinating thought. How can it be possible that the more hardware we buy, the less safe we are? How does that work?
Because the problem Taiwan military has now is it just doesn't have enough people. It has severe manpower problem. You cannot find enough volunteers, and the conscriptions that's finally being lengthened back to 1 year, starting last year. It just doesn't. Taiwan just doesn't have enough young guys coming of age, because the collapsing birth rate, and because of how badly the policy was put into place. The military is not even getting 10,000 people every year out of the conscription, the conscripts. And that compares to something like 100,000 maybe just 20 years ago. So the conscription is not filling the gap. And the volunteers recruitment have been tanking, and they're not retaining those volunteers. And so the military across the board sees huge manpower shortage. A lot of units are poorly manned. They're at 50, sometimes as bad as 50% manpower level. And so given these, what's the point of adding more weapons when you don't have enough people to man those weapons?
Wow. So you're saying it actually makes us less safe because the military budget should be funneled towards giving people better pay? Or do you think that actually buying more hardware could make us less safe because it just is more triggering or provocative?
It's because buying these weapons, they don't change the problem of manpower shortage. So you don't have people to man these new weapons. If you remove people from the older weapon to man the new weapon.
Oh, got it. There's not enough people to run all those different platforms. So it's better to focus on a few platforms rather than spreading the manpower too thin.
Yes, and also there is a limit to how much Taiwan military can man these weapons, just because the manpower problem and the limited land mass Taiwan has. So take the example of HIMARS. You need a lot of people to man these HIMARS launchers and drive them around Taiwan. And there's a limit to how many HIMARS you can have because Taiwan is so small. And these units, they need to be somewhere. They need to station here and there. And they need to move around in peacetime and also in wartime. Because if they don't move, they will get destroyed very easily. But the more launchers you have on the road, the more likely they're going to collide with other civilian traffic during peacetime, and the minute and there's going to be make headline on the news, and the military doesn't take those lightly. And what happened? They usually decrease the rate, the frequency which they go on the road, and so they stay at the camp.
Got it. So they're not getting the practice that they need.
Yes, and so the pattern of those their moments, their movements, their trainings, how they mobilize, how they move to standby positions, backup positions, and those things. Those are the things that really matter, because those decide whether they can survive when China actually attack.
So you're saying that because Taiwan's limited size, limited manpower, concern about collision with accidents with civilians in peacetime, they're kind of limited in mobility, and the limitedness in mobility could make it easier for the mainland to know where they are.
The China already knows all the places where they are. It's only the matter of how frequent they can track them in real time. Mm-hmm. If they get, and given China's huge advantage in space, ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, their satellite fleets can actually generate a new picture of any spot on Earth every 10 minutes, and that's the number 2 years ago. Now it might be even faster, quicker.
So
and with the help of AI, they don't need people to look at each single these images by hand and find out where in the images the military trucks and missiles are. The AI does the work. So the images coming from the satellites, they're being put into big machines and AI. The immediate pinpoint where based on the past image, the past patterns, and just because these launchers, these missiles, China they already know what they look like on the map, and so the AI can spot them right away on a big image, and that translates into tactical picture where China can attack.
Wow. Well, let's start with the assumption that we are trying, within the limitations that Taiwan has, to max out our ability to deter the Chinese. What would be your recommendations?
Some of the platforms that exist are definitely not going to survive when China attacks. If China attacks,
Name them.
Well, the big warships that the Navy has, those destroyers and frigates, they're terribly outdated. They're trying to upgrade them. In my opinion, there's no use, because the pace and the extent they're upgrading those things, they're just so hopelessly outdated and so hopelessly outgunned by what the Chinese PLA Navy, and also their Air Force and their rocket force. They can all attack Taiwan's Navy using long-range missiles, long-range precision fire.
Yeah, we just had that at the end of last year. We just had the Justice Mission drills, and a lot of the artillery fire they had was actually stationed on the ground, on the other side. So they're not actually coming over. We think of, if you have to attack Taiwan, you're on a boat in the Taiwan Strait, right? But they actually have land-based artillery that can hit from a long way away. So
the reason I said that the more hardware, the more pieces Taiwan buy and putting there, it might be even less safe for Taiwan. And I would say this: it could also mean the faster Taiwan would surrender when China actually attacked. The reason being, think of war as a chess game, as a where you take out the enemy's pieces and they add up, and then after you reach certain score, the other side would capitulate, surrender.
Yeah. Oh, you're saying there's more targets to hit.
Yes, and so the warships are the most obvious one. They're outdated. They're hopeless against what China has today, and so you immediately see those 20, 30 warships as big targets that China could easily take them out. It also means 1,000, 2,000 dead sailors, all these parents crying on TV, oh, the ship sank and our sons are not coming back. And
I'm starting to see what you're getting here. So there are certain pieces of equipment in the Taiwanese arsenal that are just death traps.
yes,
And
so it comes a simple solution, which is we ourselves remove those pieces from the board, and so that would not be destroyed.
Yeah.
Comes wartime. So if the Navy if they just retire these unsurvivable big warships, like right now,
that will already be safer.
yes, because then China will have less targets that they are sure they can destroy. So given less chance to score.
And it also saves on manpower that can be deployed on more practical platforms.
In theory, yes.
What would be, in theory, the kind of platform that would be more effective?
So if you think about a potential Taiwan-China war, the same manner as I do, you're really thinking about what Taiwan military should look like in order to deter China, the people in Beijing, from deciding they're going to attack, to invade. What would be the most difficult scenario for them? And it would be a case where Taiwan does not surrender, just continue to hold out, and they have to do a land invasion and amphibious operations, where they face stiff and very persistent resistance inland, on the ground. What would they be? Well, improve Taiwan's army, the ground forces, to have enough fighting forces there and the reserves. So the China and Chinese intelligence, they know how many units are there, how many are in good fighting shapes, how ready they are. Right now, it doesn't look good because Taiwan's military, the army component has been shrinking for the last 2-3 decades.
So you're basically saying our entire Navy just sucks, and we should just focus on beefing up the army component.
Because the ground forces are the most resilient, most likely to survive an overwhelming first strike. From what China has, these missiles, these precision long-range fire, these drones, these fighter jets, these advanced rockets and missiles, they still cannot reliably take out the ground forces. That's mostly infantries and ground units that's designed to fight inland.
Yeah, well, this is very counterintuitive. I say that because almost all the experts and also the population, we've been talking about the porcupine strategy and basically hellfire, or was it boiling moat? I don't remember which one, where it's like we're just gonna fill the Taiwan straits with drones and make it impassable for the PLA. And I think the idea is that we should prevent them from landing. And once, my understanding is that, well, if they get a beachhead, then Taiwan is kind of cooked. So it's interesting that this is the opposite assumption.
My thinking is they can land. It is what happened after they land that decides that decides the level of deterrence.
Oh, that's interesting, because I've always heard that, well, the Taiwan's best defense is the Taiwan Strait, and it's really hard to project power over water. There's never really been that many successful amphibious invasions, so we need to deter them so that they don't set a boot on Taiwan. That's the old thinking, right? I'm not
if Taiwan's army right now is what it was 30 years ago, or don't even have 30 years, 20 years ago, that would mean the army has 300,000 men. Right now, the army probably had not even a third of those.
Wow, that's a big drop in readiness.
If Taiwan's, just because Taiwan had a big army before, and after years and years of shrinking, it becomes like this. If the PLA is facing a 300,000 ground army, Taiwanese army, they wouldn't even thinking about invading amphibious operation.
Got it.
Just because it's such a dense pile of forces they need to take out, it will mean huge operations and months of intense fighting that's probably going to destroy most of Taiwan's urban landscapes and basically turning Taiwan to what the eastern Ukraine is like. If Taiwan has enough ground forces.
So it's still the army that is the king, but there's not enough infantry or people in the army, and
it's not just the number; it's also how well trained they are. So the focus have been primarily on platforms, and those Air Force and Navy platforms, and also the launchers. Those are important. But if I were the PLA planners, I worry about how effective Taiwan's ground units are when we actually land.
So
if there are no more than a few brigades in fighting shape, and I can easily walk over them with the limited amphibious elite troops that I have. But if I'm facing 300,000 men in active service, and actually they're actually the mechanized infantry, artillery, infantry, and armor here and there, that's a totally different landscape.
So I shouldn't make fun of the tanks that Taiwan is buying, because tanks might actually be useful.
They are useful, and they are contrary to public perception. They are survivable even in the age of drones, if you know how to operate. If they're operated correctly, and they are actually very useful in a anti-amphibious warfare. So.
If I understand you correctly, it is not true to say that China can just walk all over Taiwan right now. It will still be a substantial cost. And if we had an army of, say, 300,000, then we would actually make it an unacceptable cost.
So if I summarize what I just said, there are two ways Taiwan can go about in terms of military, in the peacetime or military strategy. One, we can focus on buying a lot of big fancy weapons and platforms. Those are mostly the Navy, the Air Force, and the launchers, and fooling ourselves thinking that these platforms can survive a first strike.
F-16s.
Yes. And doing those, and so you have a lot of pieces that's going to be taken out in the very first round versus the other strategy that I just mentioned, giving up those pieces they're easily destroyed, focusing on those very inconspicuous, not flashy, not anything, but just down to earth, traditional military, army, ground forces, the infantry, the mechanized infantry, the armor, what's happening inland, and accepting the fact that China is going to win the naval and air, control the sea and the air, which they are. They are going to.
So I think that one of the reasons why that's really unattractive to most Taiwanese people, including me, is that it's basically volunteering to turn ourselves into Ukraine if the worst happens. I think the reason why those naval and air force platforms seem so attractive is the idea that we can keep the fighting at bay. Whereas if we do what you suggest, which is okay, they can put their boots on Taiwan, but then we just have our army resist them everywhere. I think that's going to lead to higher death count and maybe higher civilian death count.
The point is exactly not to have that kind of war.
Yes.
So that you need to change the strategy right now, because the first strategy, having those pieces that are easily destroyed, what happened is it will likely lead to the most optimum scenario, victory scenario for China, which is taking out a lot of pieces in the first strike, easily capitulate Taiwan's morale and the will to fight among the decision makers,
but
and the
not
capitulations, the disruption, the shock effects, these platforms being destroyed, those images, those humiliations, it could very well force Taiwan's decision maker to capitulate even before Chinese land any troops on Taiwan. This is the ultimate scenario for China.
Oh, got it. So the Chinese are looking at our plans.
This is
like,
their best scenario in terms of,
because they would be
Taiwan.
able to easily take out a lot of soldiers without incurring the kind of civilian collateral damage or the buildings.
take out a lot of pieces.
Yeah.
So because they take out so many pieces in that short period of time, Taiwan surrendered.
Got it.
Whereas if you don't have those vulnerable pieces, you have those other pieces. They are survivable, but they're not flashy. They're not so fancy looking. However, they can actually survive the first strike. So they prolong the conflict.
What is the likelihood that we will get significant help from the United States, and what can they do to support us?
The longer Taiwan hold out, the more likely that United States could intervene. That we know for sure, because it will take a lot of time for United States to mobilize, to organize.
What is the timeline when we're talking about?
But no one knows, because it all depends on how it happened, the U.S. decision making. But we know Taiwan needs to hold out for at least some period of time.
A month?
Possibly even longer. We don't know.
Yeah, to me this is really personal.
So,
because I live here.
so if I were the PLA planners,
yeah,
I want Taiwan to have flashy pieces that I can take out very easily, and then they surrender.
Got it.
What I don't want Taiwan to have is no easily vulnerable pieces I can take out, but a lot of things hidden behind, and then I don't know, and I have no way of forcing them to surrender, because I can shoot those missiles at the air bases, at the command centers and radar sites. They're destroyed, but they might not surrender, and they hold out. So what can I do? I can do a huge amphibious invasion
Oh, got
they
it.
could turn out to be disastrous, because if Taiwan has a functioning, sizable army, they survive the first strike. There are all these soldiers and tanks and armor and artillery here and there. So any way I land, it could be disastrous. And then so they can hold out, and because they are not easily they don't easily surrender, and the U.S. could intervene, Japan could intervene, even Japan could intervene. That deters them, versus the first scenario, which is so that's why I'm saying that buying these vulnerable pieces make Taiwan more likely to surrender and make China more likely to attack Taiwan.
Got it. So what do you say is our level of deterrence now? Because I'm looking at it two ways. Is China not attacking because they are deterred, or because they would prefer a political solution?
I think they already, it's way past the point of no return. They already possess the capability to actually subdue Taiwan. However, there are still so many uncertainty for them, and they probably project the significant casualties and risk involved, and also that's not the only calculation they have. They probably still think they still think that they have time. They can wait another 5 or 10 years. It will be more advantageous for them.
So every year they're getting stronger. They have new stuff coming on the line. While Taiwan is spending a lot of money on weapons and probably having a force, a land force. That's a force that really matters, dwindling in your view.
Yes.
Yeah. So to me, it seems like we've crossed that point in time where it's really important to work on the political track, and sort of taking the deterrence that we do have. To me, that's actually important, because the less deterrence we have for China, the less value we'll be able to get on any kind of negotiating table. So in my personal mental model, Taiwan negotiating with China would probably have secured a more advantageous result 20 years ago.
It's tied to it's tied to this military strategies problem. The two approach that I talk about, how Taiwan can position toward China and actually deter them. So what happened right now, especially under DPP administrations, these last two administrations, I would say they pose the worst posture toward China. Say
more.
They are saying they are showcasing. They are saying that we're buying all these U.S. weapons. We are making us strong, so we don't. So we are thinking that these weapons empower Taiwan.
Yeah.
And they show China these, and then thinking, and say we rely on these weapons to stop you.
It's the opposite of.
And China is seeing these weapons are easily destroyed. They can easily humiliate you, easily smash these ships and these jets, these missiles.
Yeah, so I feel like what the DPP is doing is they're chihuahuaing. They're acting like a little dog that bites.
So you're exposing
barks a lot.
So they're bluffing, and then the enemy know exactly you are bluffing. Mm-hmm. You're showing your soul, your soul, your shields in a way that the enemy knows you are holding them wrong.
Got it. So.
And the posture that's going to pose more deterrence value will be at least number one, not holding the shield, the sword, not flashing those things in a way that the enemy sees vulnerability.
Got it. So probably the best posture if your goal is to continue status quo is to
So they should stop pretending these weapons are a match
yeah
of what China has.
sort of
But on the other hand, they could show that Taiwan has, say, if Taiwan has expanding its army, training a lot more soldiers, a lot more ground troops, and then building bunkers here and there. That is, but provided that those are actually survivable, and saying that and not fooling themselves that we're going to challenge China in the air and the sea, but saying that if they come ashore, we will do our best. It will be a messy war for them. This is the approach that's going to deter China, not the first one.
what do you say to the people who says, well, they're not going to do it? We've been afraid of them coming for decades and they've never done it yet. So they're too cowardly to do it, or they don't dare do it. Have you heard that before? I feel like a lot of people feel like that in Taiwan.
Like China wouldn't come.
Yeah, like they wouldn't invade.
Well, we just had a big exercise a few days ago. They show they're closer and closer every single time.
What do you think their strategy is with those exercises? Are they psychological, or are they actually part of a plan to, I don't know, I've heard some suggestions that maybe they are exercises that can turn into an actual attack, sort of creating an element of surprise?
So if you observe the Chinese jets in this recent exercise, the J I believe was a J-16, could be J-11 as well. I think that they had that both, and also even J-20. You observe the J-16, they were not carrying much air-to-air missiles at all. I think they were carrying only two. Could be the PL-15. It could also be the shorter range PL-10. But anyway, they were not on a war setting.
Footing, yeah.
In an actual war, of course, in an actual war, they would not be coming in close contact with Taiwan Air Force jets. They'll be firing missiles from long distance.
Okay, so the whole argument in the media about who was locking onto who.
It's complete bullshit. It's only military illiterates would take those things seriously.
Yeah, because that's what happened over India and Pakistan, right? The Rafales never saw the J-10Cs, right? And the J-10Cs, they're Timu F-16s. They're not even that good. But turns out, even if you have a crappy jet, if you just have a really, really, really long air-to-air missile.
I wouldn't say J-10 or crappy jets. They're on par. The upgraded one, they're on par with the Taiwan's F-16. Yes.
Wow. But Taiwan's F-16s doesn't matter because they're taking out the runways, right?
But the point is the exercise that we saw a few days ago, those Chinese jets, they were not in a war. They were not in a setting that would look like a real war. In a real setting, that would be carrying tons of anti-air missiles. They would not be in visible range of Taiwan's fighter jets. They will be on the other side. They will be accompanied by AWACS, the airborne early warning aircraft, along with their electronic warfare aircraft. That would be the AWACS will be scanning hundreds of miles away, then passing those data to the J-16, the J-11, and also the stealthy J-20, carrying a whole bunch of anti-air missiles, and they will be firing on the Taiwanese jets from 150, 200 kilometers away.
And we don't have that kind of range?
And so, no.
Wow.
The Taiwan Air Force right now, the MRAN, the AM-120, has about the range of even the newest one they're buying. It's about 120 kilometers.
Yeah,
sort of. Actually, the newest one they ordered, I'm not sure if they've been delivered yet. about 150 or so, still significantly fall short of what China has.
So basically, all the drama of people trying to investigate who was locking onto whom, it doesn't matter because they're not going to even see each other, and the Chinese jet has a greater reach. It just surely our military knows this, but I feel like the information that the government
It's all
is
propaganda.
pumping
It's all propaganda.
into the information space is. I guess they just assume we don't know better. And a lot of times we don't, right? Not everybody can devote a lot of time to these things, so they just see a grainy black and white picture of an F-16 locking onto a Chinese jet, and they're like, yeah, we got them. If it was a real fight. In a real fight, you wouldn't even see it. So I think you've kind of convinced me that the purposes of those exercises is not so that they can get really, really close to Taiwan and then all of a sudden it's a surprise invasion. It's just for show, because a real battle scenario would be so different from the exercise.
Yes. But like I said, the number one clue is to see what these fighter jets, because those are visible, what missiles, what weaponry they're carrying.
Got it.
If they're not carrying much weapons, and clearly they're not exercising in a way that looks like a wartime.
Do you think that it's true, though, that it was an exercise that completely caught the Taiwanese by surprise?
Well, you did. They did, because Taiwan national security and intelligence apparatus, they were not prepared for it.
But that was a exercise, so a smaller number of airplanes and crafts involved. Do you think that in the event of a real invasion, do you think that we will get much warning?
The level of warnings will vary, because on the one hand, the satellites, the signal intelligence, and just the analysts, the intelligence people, they could be track these fleets, these ships, and these ground units, these missile units, and they have other data as well, like the shipping patterns, the stockpiles of weapons, munitions, and even blood bags. That's a very important indication. However, those might not even apply in China's case if they decide on a limited campaign. A limited campaign doesn't mean just firing a few missiles. It means just something like an combined air, sea, and rockets and missiles attack on Taiwan. Those could significantly could require significantly less amount of logistic resources than a full-scale amphibious operation.
Got it. So, what is the upsides and downsides of a limited campaign? You just said that they'll need less preparation, but it's also like you won't be able to take the island, right, if you don't put boots on the ground.
Of course. So they're not right. So the whole assumption that we're going to see a Chinese invasion coming is, in order for them to prepare a huge amphibious operation, they need to have all these brigades, divisions close to the shore, ready to board, hundreds of thousands of people, ammo, munitions, and medical resources, and the ships. So what if they don't do it that way? They just use the air and naval and missiles to dominate Taiwan, and you don't see that coming. And it goes back to the scenario I described, the two scenarios. See, if they see vulnerability in the first scenario, that's actually what they're going to exploit.
Got it. So that ties back to the more hardware makes us more dangerous, because by concentrating all these men in those outdated piece of equipment, you're just giving them targets.
Vulnerable and outdated. Well, not just outdated. Even if they're up to date, if those are easy to take out, then they don't add to any value.
No. Well, let's turn the conversation a little bit, because this is your expertise, and I do find the conversation really interesting. But ideally, right, there wouldn't be war. And I think in order for the peace to be enduring, I don't see us dragging status quo into the future indefinitely. I feel like the United States have become quite an undependable partner. There seems to be a lot of backyardism. You know, this is your backyard, this is my backyard. And this is just my personal thoughts that Taiwan is living in a different geopolitical reality than we were in 2000, 2022. Now it's 2025. What do you think is the right mix between deterrence and engagement in helping Taiwan reach a new modus vivendi with China?
I would say, go back to what I was getting at, that saber rattling from Taiwan's side is a bad idea. Especially saying that the U.S. weapons would help us, making us more safe and secure. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Because you're only showing your enemies your vulnerability, things that could easily destroy, taken out. On the other hand, you have to show you are ready to fight down to earth, down to the streets level of warfare. That's what's actually going to deter them. But on the other hand, you say it's going to be messy and terrible for both of us. It's going to be destruction of China, of Taiwan, and also China's economy.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. It almost seems like Taiwan can only win if it treats itself as a hostage and saying, "Don't come any closer. I'm going to kill myself." It's not very attractive for somebody who's living on the island.
No, but in terms of position, in terms of Taiwan's posture to China, what Taiwan responsible leader should say now is, look, majority of Taiwanese are not in favor of unification with you. Doesn't mean that won't change. It just means it won't happen now. Think of China as the one that making a bet, an offer.
Yeah.
Like someone's pursuing Taiwan. The person being pursued, the pursuer is dangerous. It show a tendency of violence. But the person being pursued, on the one hand, you need to defend yourself. On the other hand, you don't want to provoke that person.
So it's a delicate balance to be struck.
So maintaining your positions, and saying, look, the reason we can't take your offer now is just Taiwan public and not with you. Maybe that will change. Let's just wait.
And what advice would you give to China in terms of trying to not have to invade? And
well, so peaceful unification is China's number one preferred outcome.
Yes.
That's what I have been saying for a long time. And even the last 10 years, when they are really getting into preparing for a war, they still see, I believe, even in Xi Jinping, like I can't speak for him, but from decision maker perspective, that's still their preferred outcome if they can somehow get Taiwanese to say yes. And so I would say then, Sudan, try it the way, but not the way that they have been doing in the past.
So basically, you're saying that all those drills around Taiwan, that's not a helpful approach.
Not helpful at all. And also, they also don't help them in actually preparing for successful war or invasion.
Yeah.
I mean, they could get some data out of. They could put pressure on Taiwan's military, put attractions on Taiwan's hardware and personnel. That's probably what they are thinking. But if it's up to me, I would do those things less, just because I could. Those are the things that turn Taiwan public against them.
Yeah.
Whereas if I continue preparing military capabilities and the ability to invade, to attack, but not showing Taiwan those, not at least not like actively like patrolling on Taiwan, like doing those things. Those could actually, if the things calm down, maybe Taiwan public will rethink and conversation will shift.
Yeah, it's a really mobile conversation. There's a lot of ups and downs, and I have to say the most helpful thing to shifting the conversation forward has been DPP incompetence and overreach, because I think every time they do that, more people get annoyed with them.
So the best advice for both sides is what it's like Theodore Roosevelt said: hold a big stick, speak softly.
Yes.
And hold a big stick.
And don't be a chihuahua and bark all day and have no bite.
If both sides pursue this approach, this attitude, there will actually be peace, because both sides in Taiwan will be able to deter. And China will see Taiwan's strengths and build out its own strengths, but also respect strengths, not words.
Do you think a durable status quo, if Taiwan really, really focus on deterrence, is possible in the absence of a reliable America? Because for all we know, there's already been some backroom deals, and Trump's already like, I don't know, Taiwan for TikTok or something. Who knows, right? There could be a grand bargain. Do you think Taiwan has the ability to deter alone?
It would be a terrible war for Taiwan, especially if the United States doesn't intervene, and Taiwan will most likely lose. Meaning that if China really tried and willing to throw everything, eventually you will gain control of Taiwan. Maybe it's a ruining.
Stupid question. Yes. Do you think that there is a peace that's acceptable to Taiwan that is not status quo forever? Do you see some sort of rapprochement between Taiwan and the mainland under some sort of framework that can be enduring?
But China's problem is its obsession over Taiwan. It sees Taiwan as what defines their future. So it's hopelessly pursuing Taiwan, believing that Taiwan is its destiny, that being together with Taiwan is their future. Facing an opponent like this, and I wouldn't say like an enemy, potential enemy, someone like an aggressor or pursuer like this, you have to be smart, and you have to say no, but you need to have what it takes to say no and keep saying no. But at the meantime, not provoke a fight that you can't win.
Yeah, I don't think that approach is going to work for very much longer, because I think they're onto us, and I think that they look at somebody like Zheng Liwen, who's very open.
I think, however, on Zheng, I think China is again mistaken. They think she represents a sort of pro-China outcome for pro-China forces that could produce the optimal outcome for them, having most Taiwanese support unifications. Zheng doesn't even represent the entirety of the KMT supporters, because she is clearly more pro-China than the average KMT supporters. And also, even Zheng herself, she is not a pro-unification person.
Yeah, I don't think it's.
So these KMT, if China's CCP put hope on KMT to deliver a unification agenda, totally mistaken.
Well, this is really grim for me because I think that if Zheng gets elected and she doesn't deliver on some version of rapprochement, I think it's going to be war.
It could, yeah. And it could happen under a KMT president. That's the irony.
It could happen under a KMT president. It could happen under a DPP president, because you already said that we actually don't have the kind of forces we would need to possibly do a deterrence.
The problem for China, if I have a conversation with the decision makers in Beijing,
yeah,
like Wang Huning or someone like that, like in response
Wang
for
Huning,
Taiwan,
are you watching?
Response for Taiwan team.
Big fan of America against America.
I will lay out this problem exactly the way I did. You have 10% of people support unification.
Yeah.
At 10%, no conversation about actual unification is ever going to happen from Taiwan's political system. Taiwan has political system, it's a democracy. People who get elected gets to make decisions. With 10%, you're never going to vote anyone who's even remotely aligned with that goal in power. Zheng doesn't, being elected KMT chairperson doesn't indicate that. And so but on the other hand, if your goal is peaceful unification, try to increase that 10% to even 20 or 30 would be a huge step. Is that doable? Actually, I think there is a possibility there, because no one knows what future is going to be like.
The world is changing very quickly.
So they are saying that they don't give up hope, and I think they shouldn't give up. They should keep trying, offering Taiwan better deals or showing Taiwan better outcome, better future.
I feel like that was the track we were on for President Ma's term, and then everything changed with the DPP after that. And I don't know, it's a very, very thorny question, but I think ultimately we are Taiwanese. Well, we are Chinese. We are Chinese on Taiwan, and we're too smart to do this thing, and the Chinese on the mainland are also, we're just too smart to do the thing that'll hurt each other.
If I can project, if somehow the level of support for unification increased to about 40%, Taiwan will elect a leader that starts a unification talk with China. You don't need 100%. Because at about 40%, 40 to 50%, that's strong enough for that electoral force to get serious. And then at that point, it will be over the national discussion. It will be, people are actually going to be debating what in that future what we will be like.
I just don't know we have the time for that. But I don't know. Opinion is also changing very quickly. So yeah, I guess.
But that's what, like the DPP that lied, and that's that should be their posture to China. Look, we don't want your unification right now. Not because we personally don't like them, but because most Taiwanese don't like them. We represent the people, so we say no. It's only 10%. If you somehow give us a better offering, if you somehow change your behavior in a way that Taiwanese find attractive, who knows? So the door is open, but you are not right now. You're not in.
Yeah,
like-
I just don't think I don't feel like anybody from the mainland hearing that is going to go for it. Because I think from their point of view, they've already given Taiwan a lot, and
It's like facing a pursuer, someone that's like a very persistent suitor, and then you say, "Look, I don't like you right now. Maybe in the future. Not saying no forever, but you need to change." I think that's the best way to calm things down.
yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe it will be war after all, because I just don't really see. I just don't really see that approach working with Taiwan either, because the Taiwanese have, or the DPP, I should say, have a tendency to say, "Okay, we'll take everything you've given us, and we'll still hate you." So I think that attitude is just makes
The DPP,
that approach a non-starter.
because their electoral needs, their domestic politics.
Yeah, I think for domestic policy, they need to demonize China,
Yes.
and that makes goodwill from China as a way of sweetening reunification really, really difficult.
And what happened in Venezuela this yesterday, well, like Rubio and Trump and Hexed were saying, well, Maduro was fooling around, effing around, and then he found out. The DPP right now, they have domestically, they have this incentive to fool around, to showing these weapons and saying and then the worry is they will find out one day when the weapons actually, when China actually comes knocking the door.
On that merry note, I think it's about time for us to wrap up the conversation. Thank you, Paul. I felt like that conversation really got into the nitty-gritty of all these different dynamics that are unexamined on the mainstream media. So we have an expert like Paul on the Taipology show to explain it to us. Paul, is there anything else you wanted to add?
That would be all. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. And please come back on the show again in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.